I would throw myself into something like this is because the questions are there, but I'm also that sort that's just going to like, okay, let's go.
Wow. Because what you just right now mentioned is that powerful question. Once you are done with a goal or a target that you have set, once you've achieved it, what after that? And you ask yourself the question, well, that's it. What next? So,
Well, I think it's important. So when you're going for the goal, you throw yourself into it, right? Like if you want to make a movie, if you want to run a race, if you want to start a business, you throw yourself into it, but you reach a point where in a certain sense you've achieved it. And I think it's very important in life to take time at that point where you achieve success and really consider what you want. Really consider, is this still something? Say I start a business and I throw myself into it for 5 years and I sell it or make it into publicly traded or whatever myriad of options there are there. At that point, I've thrown so much of my energy and life into it to sit down and say, what do I want now? What do I want now? And even in terms of marriage, in terms of any of these things, you know, you say you get married, then you sit down and say, okay, well, what do I want? And do I really want, you know, this? Do I want that? Even before marriage, you know, I think it's probably important. But sitting down at every step and not with any answer in mind, you know, because a lot of people would say, you know, you get to success in business and stop and take some time and look at what you want. And maybe you'll see it wasn't that important. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll see you want to do it more and grow it into a multi-billion-dollar business. Maybe you'll see that you want to pivot to some other business and build it. Maybe you want to stop and take 6 months in the wilderness, hiking the Appalachian Trail or something like that. There's no answer. But I think a lot of us stop asking the questions and live a life. I think Thoreau said it, to live an unexamined life where you're not, it doesn't need to be constant, right? Like once you set your mind on a goal, you can't sit there and waver. You won't get there. But once you reach a goal, you stop and you say, all right, is this something that I want to continue doing? Is this the way I want to continue living my life? Even in terms of spirituality, right? Say you want to go and do sadhanapada and stay for 7 months and do that. You do sadhanapada for 7 months and you sit and you say, okay, what is it I want next? You know, what do I want to create out of life? What do I want for myself? What will fulfill me? Because that changes. And if it doesn't, if who I am and what I want doesn't change a year from now, it's a very stagnant life.
absolutely. And this brings to the aspect that, yes, after you came to India, Sadhguru called you over here. So now please continue. How many years you have been with him in terms of every aspect, if you can please continue.
Okay. So I went in 2009 in October. I was in silence for a month from October to November. Then I did half day silence where I'd be in silence till 1 p.m., then go work with the homeschool kids for about, I feel like 5 or 6 months. I came back when the Anadi program was announced. And I was actually living in California with my buddy Christian, who also did the Anadi program. And then the Anadi program happened. It was intense. It was 3 months with Sadhguru. We got initiated into a different practice. And that practice, the point of it apparently was to concentrate our sanchita karma and work it out. So after that, I thought I was just going to go and do this and then go back to homeschool. After that, a couple of things happened during the program. About 3 weeks in, I got a call and or the volunteer came and said, you have a phone call. Now, we weren't supposed to have any contact with the outside world. So I'm thinking, well, what do you mean I have a phone call? My grandpa had died. He was the only grandparent I was really close with. Kind of my grandmother too, but she was a little bit insane. So I was really close with him and he had passed away. And they told me the deal was is I could go to the funeral, but unfortunately, if you leave for 3 or 4 days, you can't come back. And that's um, just the nature of the process, right? Like it's a intense thing that he's trying to get done with us. You can't break the process and then re-enter it. I talked to my family and they said, if this is very important to you, if this is, the once in a lifetime thing you think it is, you go visit his grave when you come back. Stay there, do that, go visit his grave when you come back. So that happened. Then I didn't know this at the time. Actually, about a month later, my uncle died. So I didn't know that. I don't think my family contacted. I wasn't close to my uncle. He was unique. I'll say it like that. He's passed away, so I won't say anything bad about him. But he was unique. And then the last day we were doing the last 2 days we did this like intensive where we did these. So the Anadi practice, you can do them back to back. You don't have to give gap. You don't have to do that. And so we were doing this intensive where it was, 2 days absolute silence. Before that, we were in working silence, which meant if we were volunteering, we could have conversation about volunteering. This was back to absolute silence. And we just get up in the morning, do sadhana, and then do like 5 or 6 of these practices. And it was exhausting. Like you do one or two of them, and then you'd like finish one, fall down, sleep for 5 minutes, get up, go again. And it was just like on, on, on. Well, in the middle of that, my friend Christian, he had he was a race car driver, and so he had a race to get to. So it was known that he would leave one day early. So apparently he went to the office, and at the office there was one of those little please call tags, those little notes, and it said, "Have Joshua call his family as soon as he's done with silence. Family emergency." For some reason, he thought this would be a good idea to put on my pillow while I'm in silence and I have 24 hours left of silence and I can't call. So in my mind, all this is going through. I'm like, okay, so what happened? What's going on? Trying to focus where I'm at, not fully able to focus where I'm at. And I get done and call home, and my dad's in rehab. He's confronted a 40-year drinking problem. And so he was basically to the point where he probably wouldn't have made it another week or two if he had continued drinking because he had just kind of gone off the cliff. So they checked him into rehab. My family was basically a mess because this was something we had dealt with, but we had never had to come to terms with. Um, and then life just started happening. Like everything sped up. I look at that time and how I describe it is it's like you're sitting under this waterfall trying to get a breath and you're drowning and you can just get enough to get one breath and then you're back underwater, right? And everything's pounding on you and then you get one breath. And that's how it felt for about, so I was still involved in Isha, 2000, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2012, I went and did silence for a month and it was really, really intense. And I was miserable. And I actually, at that point, I kept up my practices, but I kind of took a step away from Isha. Started working on business, started working on acting, started acting, started doing these things. And actually ended up dating someone from 2000. 2013 to about 2016. But I kept up my practices the whole time. It was one of those things that I was doing my hatha, I was doing my kriya, I was doing everything. I don't even know why I stepped away. I like looking back, it was just like everything was so intense. And then when I went to the ashram, it made it more intense. And I couldn't handle that. I think that's more of what it is. It's like Sadhguru often says, if you give a pound of gold, even if you give a pound of gold to an ant, it'll squish it, right? Um, and there were a lot of us, I think, that were going through these intense experiences where like life was just happening so fast. Like things were just coming at you so fast. And it seemed like when I went into silence for that period, I was pouring gas on the fire. It was like I just sped everything up even more. Um, 2016, I applied for Hatha Yoga teacher training. I did not get in, um, which is a funny story because they told me I needed to go volunteer more. I was already volunteering. It's much, I couldn't get in touch with them to see if I could challenge what they were saying. So, my buddy called me up and he says, let's go to Kailash. Like there's a small group trip with Kailash. It'll be about the same cost as if you're going to take 5 months off for Hatha Yoga teacher training as to do this 1 month trip and you can keep working. And it was, I saw, I'll just leave that be. I don't need to go into that. So I ended up going to Kailash that year. The relationship had ended. It was a very tumultuous relationship. I can only look back and think that it probably was some level of karma I was working out, because it was one of those ones that we should have split, 2 months in and went our separate ways. And we stuck around and tried to make it happen for 2.5 years.